Study QB, and we are in the progressive war room with my man Marcus Cooper, and he is a former Navy officer who has a ton of experience with campaigns, working with campaigns. Specifically, he's a digital volunteer coordinator. And I've been, we had a great chat yesterday before this for like 5 minutes. And I was like, you just got me so excited because I know this is going to be a great conversation. And I had to like kind of stop the conversation. Wait. This is great stuff that we need to talk about this on the show. So Marcus, say what's up to the people.
Hey, y'all, it's me, Marcus. I just want to correct you real quick. I wasn't an officer. I was enlisted in the Navy. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just one of those things. I don't want to, besmirch the officers, and I want to let all the other former Navy enlisted and current Navy enlisted know that, I was in the struggle too.
Okay, cool. Thank you for correcting the record on that. All right. So the first thing I want to talk to you is, so let me give the audience the rundown what we're going to talk about real quick. We're going to talk about Marcus's experience with campaigns. We're going to talk about building a strong volunteer base. We're going to talk about some electoral progressive strategies, some things that touch on the India Walton Buffalo loss and the Nina Turner race loss, what he thinks about it. We're going to talk about a little bit about forced to vote and using that as a political strategy. We're going to talk about the People's Gauntlet, because that's basically why I wanted to bring them in and talk about some specific questions about how I can implement the People's Gauntlet with volunteers. That's why I wanted to talk to experienced volunteer coordinator about that. So the first thing let's get to know Marcus a little bit more. So the first thing I want to bring up was that in the email you talked to me, you said you consider yourself a conservative, right? And but you support progressives. So give me your whole spiel on that, please.
All right. So here's the deal with conservatism. There's two real brands of conservative. There's your I hate Mexicans and I love money conservatives. And there's conservatives that are trying to keep families together, that are trying to spend less money on crime, that are trying to prevent certain bad things from happening. And that's the type of conservative I am. And that's the type of conservative a lot of conservatives are. And what we're looking for is policies that protect working families, policies that spend less money on crime. If you spend more money on school, for instance, you spend less money on criminals. Why would I want somebody to grow up poor with nothing, who always had his pockets and his belly empty, and then he turns 16, he starts robbing people? When I can spend that money on school, when I can pay his parents to have food, when therefore he grows up and maybe he only manages, a Macy's or something. That's cool. He's paying taxes. I'm not using my tax money to pay for him to be in jail, getting better at robbing people. That's what my dad went through. That's what my cousins went through. Why would I want that for other young people I don't even know, so they can rob me at night? That doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing with conservatives. Oh, we want to reduce teen pregnancy. We want to reduce abortions. You know what reduces abortions? Sex education. The state with the highest rate of teen pregnancy is Alabama. The second highest rate is another southern state. You get southern conservative states with these high rates of teen pregnancy because these girls and these boys don't really know how to prevent themselves from getting pregnant. You want to protect the preborn, then the best way to do it is to make sure they never get conceived. So a lot of conservatives are okay with a bunch of policies that seem progressive. And that's why I work with progressives too, because progressives at the end of the day want to make sure that you're safe, that you're fed, that your kids are safe, that you're fed, that little kids in Afghanistan and Iraq are safe, because we're not blowing them up every other day on accident. Everybody's looking for the same thing. So I work with anybody that's moving the ball forward to a better America.
That's what we need. We need more of us working together. And that's awesome that you said that, because I truly believe that even though the People's Gauntlet, which is an initiative I'm working hard to build, even though that's I would call it a left initiative, it's a nonpartisan initiative, meaning that a Republican can do the People's Gauntlet, Democrat, of course, a Green Party, anyone can do the People's Gauntlet. So thank you for clearing that up and showing that we can work with conservatives on the left. We can work with and we want the same thing at the grassroots level. I meet people all the time in my personal life that I talk to them, and when I have a couple layers deep, they could vote for Bernie Sanders,
exactly.
Right? For example, specifically on Audit the Fed, I was talking to somebody who is definitely I think he voted for Trump eventually, but I said, hey, Bernie wanted to audit the Fed. He was like, really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I was like, would you vote for him if he was if he won? And he said, hey, if you can prove to me that he really wanted to. And I showed him an article that this is something that he really wanted to audit the Fed. So this is from a conservative perspective. So awesome. That's awesome. All right. So the first question, give me your experience on the different campaigns.
Okay. I'm from California. My first stint volunteering was.
Are you there right now? Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm not. I'm in rural Pennsylvania. My wife's a neuropsychologist.
Okay, I'm just curious.
She works at a hospital out here in the middle of nowhere. But so I grew up in California, and so the first thing I worked on was the Robert Massoubi campaign. He was my first congressman. Sadly, he passed shortly after his election. His wife took over the district. She won the special election. That was a Democrat. I moved to Alabama for college. I worked with. Don't hate me for this. I volunteered for Jeff Sessions. So the reason I volunteered for the Sessions campaign is that they were going around registering everybody to vote. And in Alabama, there's a big history of. I mean, it's not even a history. It was happening 2 years ago. They will not let certain people vote, and that includes college students and Black people. So my number one thing is if everybody votes, then you have a better representation of who is saying things and what they're saying. So I volunteered for Sessions for a bit. I joined the Navy. When you're in the Navy, you can't volunteer for political campaigns. So I helped the Democrat and the Republican primary in 2016. I got to see the Trump train in its infancy for the Washington State primary, and that was insane to watch. Tallying the votes was crazy. I got out of the Navy 7 years later. I worked for the Yvette Clarke campaign when her primary, when she was going against Adam Boncadeco in around Sheepshead Bay area. And then I'm volunteering currently for the Steve Holden campaign. That's the 24th district up in Syracuse, New York. And also previously, I worked with a couple of local Pennsylvania people, getting them elected and helping them run their primaries where they did not win.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So let me give a shout out to Steve Holden. That's someone he's the person that put me on your radar or introduced me to you, and he's going to be doing the People's Gauntlet soon. I schedule that Zoom and hopefully to get that out. So anyone want to learn more about Steve, check out follow People's Gauntlet on Twitter. Every time someone posts a gauntlet, I post it there. So, all right. So the next question is, I want to dig deeper into your job. What do you do specifically?
Okay. So for Steve, what I'm doing is digital outreach and team building. So one of the things that I learned in the military that I carried over in a civilian life is how to reduce work. And what that means is, so there's a framework called Agile. It's used in business and everything, but there's a concept called toil. So what toil is when you're doing work that could be automatic. And everybody knows that from working any job with paperwork. The second one is when there's a job that 3 people are doing that one person can do. And I saw a lot of that working with the Pennsylvania Democrats for the primary campaign. I saw a lot of it in this past election in November, working with the Democrats up in Syracuse. If you're running for city council and another person's running for city council, and you guys are friends, and you have somebody running for mayor, and you have another person running from special election to fill a student board or some school board position, you're all running the same type of campaign. You're all doing the same thing. You shouldn't each have your own slate of volunteers. You're all knocking on the same doors. Now, we know this as private citizens who have doors. I don't want 6 people knocking on my door to tell me to vote, essentially in the same election. I want one person saying, yo, you live in District 4? Check this out. Bam, 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 bam. These are your people. Here's why. They're going to put money in your pocket. They're going to put teachers in your schools. They're going to, make the police not beat people up for no reason. That's what we're doing. Can you vote for us? Yes. Shake hands and you leave. That's what we need. So you're running 50 volunteers in 3 different places when you could have 150 volunteers reaching more people. That's toil. And what COVID did is COVID showed that the only way you can do this now volunteer-wise is by efficiently putting your volunteers together. And there's a couple of organizations that do that. I want to give a shout out to Swing Left. Swing Left does that very well. They'll get volunteers from anywhere, and they have phone software so that when you text somebody or when you phone bank, it comes out from an area code in that area. Because I don't answer out of state area codes. If I haven't lived there, I don't want to talk to that person. So what Swing Left does is they figure out a way to push. If you have a bunch of volunteers for Indiana and the elections in Virginia, push those volunteers into Virginia in a manner that's really cost effective and works.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. I'm going to see if I could bring up the website for Swing Left just to show everybody. So the first question I have for you, right, as a volunteer coordinator, digital coordinator, how do you actively recruit? So for somebody, if I'm a candidate running for the first time, literally I have nobody, like no campaign manager or anything like that, but I need to start getting the word out. What would be your advice for me?
Pull up a map of your district and locate every college in your district, college, community college, grad school, everything. And you contact, if you're a Democrat, contact the Dems. You're a Republican, contact the Republicans. If you're a Democrat, also contact the DSA. There's a bunch of other Democrat affiliated groups that'll be on campus. If you have a really big Black population, hit up the Black Student Union, hit up the Hispanic Student Union, call those people. You'll find your volunteers. And oftentimes you'll find people with ideas you've never heard of just because they're young. Young people know how to contact other young people, and young people, by and large, don't vote. So if you can leverage that, especially in a primary where you're looking at 15,000, 25,000 votes, suddenly you have 5,000 votes nobody's ever seen before. That puts you over the top. That's how people win.
Gotcha. So let me bring up, if this is the site here. Show add to Swing. Is this their site? Swing
That's
Left?
them. Yep.
Okay. So everybody check out swingleft.org. You got the endorsement of Marcus right here saying they do great work. So that's interesting. I'm going to check this out definitely later to find out some more details about them. So that's good advice. Find out your local college. And if I go there with my pamphlets and maybe try to meet with the Democrats of whatever university, right?
Exactly.
And say, hey, can I come to your next meeting? Can I have a 10-minute talk with them? That's what you do. Okay. And then you could talk to them about what you do. What other places, should I try to go to churches in the area? What else?
So it really depends on how the area is, because one of the things that I know, I grew up in Black church. I've been in church my whole life. One of the things is when somebody shows up for the first time and starts asking for you to help them with their political campaign, it's normally viewed with suspicion, and it should be. So if you haven't been in the community like that for whatever reason, there's a lot of people who, especially now, who used to be, working moms who go into politics. So they haven't had time to be in the community. My mom's never been in the community her entire life. She works 40 hours a week and she has kids. So if she ran for politics, if she ran for an office, all she'd have is her church. So going to church can bite you because people might see you as fake. You start with the college students, you go to charities in town, volunteer. Because what you're trying to do is let people know that you are going to show up for them once you get the office. Because a lot of people get the paycheck and leave.
Interesting. Go ahead.
No, you got it.
So, are you saying even maybe before you run, try to visit some of these places just so they see you when you're not asking for something?
Exactly. It's like courting anybody else. If you're trying to date somebody, you find out what they're interested in. Talk to them about what they're interested in before you tell them you're interested in them. Because otherwise, it's a much higher hill to climb. Don't climb mountains when you can climb hills. All you're trying to do is get to the top.
Awesome. That's some great advice. So anybody out there, and my goal is to get regular people to run too, and I don't care if you're trying to come up through the machine, because sometimes in certain machines they say, oh, it's not your turn yet. We have this and this person lined up to come into this position. I don't care if you're going through the machine or if you're got motivated by Bernie, you say, hey, I'm just going to go for it. You still have to have strategy. And you have to kind of plan beforehand. Okay, I want to go to the churches. I want to go to the schools. Let me go visit them before I announce, just to get to know a couple people. Let me see. And that can help you covertly find out who the power players are, so you could take notes. So when you do run, you could go to those specific power player people and say, hey, let me galvanize your support, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go on. And then we're going to revisit the volunteer position as we go when we talk about the People's Gauntlet, because I want to find out and get your advice on how we can incorporate volunteers into the People's Gauntlet. But the next question I want to ask you is, let's talk about political strategy. So we had the Nina Turner race, we had the Indian Walton race, and those are unfortunately progressives that that failed their election. I want to know what you think about it, and you could talk in either one, however long you want to, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, let's talk about Nina Turner first.
Okay.
So Nina Turner, Ohio, the 11th district. That's a strong Black district. That's a strong Democrat district. It's been blue since forever. What she failed to consider, and it's not her fault. Nobody really considers it till it happens, but it's that you're always going to be outspent. She raised more money definitely than her competitor, but what she didn't have is all the outside forces that were coming in to make sure she didn't win. You're always going to be outspent. And one of the things that activists in the 60s had to deal with was the fact that they were working from behind. And you have to realize you're working from behind. You're running a guerrilla campaign no matter how much money you have. You got to play like the Viet Cong. You figure out where you're going to hit and you hit them hard. You figure out what you need to be at and you show up there. You don't have as much money. You don't have as many volunteers. You need to figure out where you're supposed to be striking and strike there. And one of the problems a lot of people that run campaigns run into is they use voter metrics from the previous election. There's no need to use voter metrics from the previous election. That's how Hillary Clinton lost. I think you're muted.
Is that the Van data?
Not the Van data. Van is a fantastic service.
Okay.
But Van is using.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's perfect to talk about Van. So Van is using last election's metrics, but it gives you a lot more stuff. What I'm talking about is when you get your analysts in. One of the things that the book was Shattered, where they talked about Hillary Clinton's loss, Bill Clinton was walking in the room and telling the people, hey, the numbers you're using aren't going to work for you. They were using Barack Obama's 2008 numbers to figure out turnout. And when you do that, you do not take into account what happened in 2008. You don't have, you're coming off of Bush. You don't have charismatic, attractive man. You don't have any of those things when you're running the Clinton campaign. So they used those numbers and they ended up in a bad position. So, they lost the Rust Belt. They lost the upper Midwest. And it was because they used the Obama numbers. The same thing happened to Turner. So what we need to remember is, especially in primaries, especially in special elections, the average voter does not vote. When people talk about the average voter in your district, they talk about the average person who has voted. And in a special election, that means you're leaving out 70% of people. Can you get those people to vote? If you can get those people to vote, you will win every single time. That's how AOC won. That's how they won in Georgia, this past special election for the senators. That's how Biden won Arizona. You get people who do not vote to show up to the polls and the numbers swing. And that's what we knew in the 60s. Malcolm X said it. Martin Luther King said it. Rustin, like everybody said it. You get people who don't vote to show up and suddenly things are different. That's why they don't let us vote in certain states.
Interesting. So that's something I want to come to you also about a theory that I have it's the most obvious thing in the world. But I have a theory that the best situation that a progressive grassroots supporter can win in is using the sneak attack.
Yes.
Right? That's not the only way somebody could win, because Cori Bush ran twice and the second time wasn't a sneak attack. She's just trying again. But AOC won using that sneak attack.
Yep.
And basically you're not a threat to the super establishment. They're looking at you and like, you're not going to win. This person not going to win. Blah, blah, blah. And I would argue, and I think I brought this up in a different show, that Nina Turner, her mistake, one of her main mistakes that I could tell from the outside looking in, because I wasn't on the ground, was putting out that poll. I think her team leaked that initial poll that showed that she was like 70 points ahead. I forgot exactly what number, like 40 points ahead, something like that. And you're like signaling to the establishment, hey guys,
I'm gonna win.
Like,
you better watch
in
out.
This race. I'm about to win this thing, without any opposition. So what do you think about that?
I've always said that's dumb, right? You want everybody to feel like if they don't individually come and vote, you're going to lose. You want everybody to feel needed. And that's another thing, because on one hand, when you say you're up by 70 points, let's go back to the Clinton campaign, when the Clinton campaign puts out that they're going to win by double digits in every single state, what happens? People that are motivated to show up when you need them won't show up. It's just, if you were moving and you said, hey, can you guys come over, pack some boxes up? How many people do you have? Oh, I have about 40 people showing up. I have kids. I'm not going to show up. I have stuff to do. When you say, hey, bro, like, I don't know if anybody's going to show up, man. It's the middle of winter. It's snowing. The people who care about you are going to show up. And the people that cared about you but had obligations didn't show up. Furthermore, like you said, now the opposition knows that you're ahead. Now they actually have to, crack open the chest and pull out the money and pay to get you to catch up to you. Never, ever, ever show anybody that you're ahead. Never tell your allies that you're ahead. You need them to show up and fight just in case.
So, okay, is there ever a point where you do want to leak that information? Let me ask that
there
question.
isn't. No, there's never a point you want to leak the information. If you're trying to raise funds, you give that information to the person you're trying to get money from. You do not give that information to the public.
Very good. So I would, for the purpose of discussion, I want to contrast the opposite. Like, if you're establishment and you're trying to clear the race, like right before campaign starts and people start jumping in, like what Hillary Clinton did this, Jeb Bush did this back in 2016. They had their people, I think it was the Win Hillary Fund. I forgot the exact name of it. But anyway, they raised a whole bunch of money. Jeb Bush raised hundreds of millions of dollars right before jumping in, so that when they jump in, they say, hey, we got this amount of money. People who were thinking about running, and they looked at that number and like, that's a little, all right, I'm not going to jump in. So if you're establishment, and I don't know why I'm giving advice to the establishment anyway, that's when you would do that strategy. But the point I'm trying to make is progressive got to do the opposite of that, right?
It hasn't worked for the establishment either.
And that's true. It does. I'll say this. I think it helped clear the field. There's people that would look at that and not join the race, but that doesn't mean they're going to win.
See, that's definitely true. It might keep some people out of the race, but a motivated, which you want people who will quit later in the race because they're going to quit and join your team because they're pragmatic.
Okay.
Because what if let's say you're running and Jeb Bush runs, the Republican whip runs, a bunch of big name Republicans run, and you Jeb Bush know you have more money, they're going to quit after the first primary, and now they're on your team prominently. It's still bad strategy. And Jeb Bush didn't win the primary. Hillary Clinton won the primary after they started scheduling debates, on Monday Night Football and up against big events. And, Tulsi Gabbard talked about that, and she ended up having to resign as the vice chair of the Democrat Party. But it doesn't work for anybody. It only works in small ball races where only a couple people were going to run anyway. It does not work in significant races. It might work for the school board.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. 100%. Let me give some love to the chat real quick. PJ Holly, we got PJ All for Nothing is in the building. War Deer Entertainment is in the building. Thank you so much, guys, for coming out in the chat. So I just want to say real quick, Marcus is spot. This is what War Deer Entertainment said. Marcus is spot on. Never tell people how far ahead you are because people will say, well, they got it. Don't need my help. And that's so true. That is so true. All right. So what about India Walton's race? I know you got some stuff to talk about that in Buffalo.
So with Walton, I don't think Walton thought she was going to win. I don't think she thought she was going to win the primary. And so, sometimes you're running to get your ideas out there, and I respect that. You're supposed to do that. It's really necessary, especially when you're as left as she is. I don't think she thought she was going to win the primary. And then when it came time to the general election, the exact same thing happened. There is a machine. You have to be able to beat the machine. You call it the sneak attack. I call it guerrilla tactics. It's the exact same thing. You have to have people that'll pop up from the rocks and throw a grenade to make it a war metaphor. But she didn't have those people because in Buffalo, you have the exact same problem everybody else has everywhere else. The people who like you do not vote. You have to convince them to vote. You have to make them show up to the polls. Do not try to eat off of Democrats because Democrats will gravitate toward the establishment. That's what they are. If you're more left than most Democrats, find people who are so left they don't vote. That's what the DSA is out there for. You need to find the people who are engaged, but don't. My vote doesn't count. Your vote counts specifically. You tell them that. We've all seen the war movie. The general goes out there, and every single one of you men is somebody who I needed. We've seen those movies, and you have to make every single soldier feel like he's going to win the war, whether or not he makes it, because that's how you win the battle.
Yeah, 100%. They say there's an adage that when someone uses a ship and they get to the shore, you burn the ship. So you let the people know, you let your soldiers know there's no way to go back. There's no place to retreat from. So we've got to move forward. Let me throw this question in here from Nito. Thank you, Nito Nova, for joining us. who can take over Bernie Sanders' spot for 2024? So we going in. I'm gonna, as people ask questions and good questions, we're gonna address them as well. But we got other stuff we're gonna talk about, and I'm gonna let my man go at 11. I want to respect people's time, but so if we get to a certain point that I need to go back to my schedule questions, we're gonna do that. But what you think about this question? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't think it's a bad question because people want to know who's going to be the next Bernie.
Yes,
and what we have to look at is we have to look at who Bernie spawned. So now we have AOC. Now we have Rashida Tlaib. Now, like, we have multiple people now who can do what Bernie did, just running for president without running for president. Because at the end of the day, what he was trying to do is let progressives know that they had a voice. So we have to capitalize on that. And the way we capitalize on that is not by getting another person from Vermont, and no shade to Vermont, but Vermont, it's out of the way. We need people from where we are to run the same type of campaign Bernie did, except win. And we've seen that happen more and more. The Congressional Progressive Caucus used to be an in-name only type thing. We want school lunches. It was a very suburban, stay-at-home mom type deal, and we're moving away from that. It's more ethnic. It's more people who had jobs, but we need to primary more Democrats. That's just what it comes down to. Primary more Democrats, win more Republican places if you're looking for progressive movement, and that takes strategy.
Yes, I'm with you, man. We're gonna be having some more discussions in the future because this is you talking about stuff. Because definitely we need to primary people and just. Out of the fact that strategy, even if they don't win, that's going to put pressure on them. Like, oh shoot, I almost lost. I barely won by 5 points. We got to talk to the progressives and see what we can work with. All right, so I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to get in on this question too. So there's a couple of people I would love to see. So I know, first of all, if you have Biden running again, if you have Trump running again, right? I don't mind. I wouldn't mind Bernie jumping back in the race because they all old people. So it's like I'm not an ageist, but it's like you might as well, Bernie, if you feel you're strong enough or whatever, you might as well. All right, so let's put that aside. So let's say Biden doesn't run, Pete Buttigieg or Kamala is trying to run and trying to see who would win between those two. I mean, some people that I love. And maybe again, let me go back to the old people. If Bernie doesn't run, I would love to see Jesse Ventura run. I know he's really up there in age, but I think Jesse is a genius when it comes to marketing as far as messaging. Let me use that word. I think he's a genius when it comes to messaging. He knows how to boil things down to like one sentence, and it hits you right. Like the common sense of what he's saying hits you right there. So I think he's a very good message person. He almost ran on the Green Party ticket last time, but they weren't able to work out something. I think Howie Hawkins. Yeah, they couldn't. His issue was that he wanted to have health care, and he was working for RT, so he didn't want to leave that situation. Which that's where he got his health care. His wife is needs the health care, and that's what happened there. Okay, so let's say we put the old people aside for a second. I wish Suwama Sawant. I think I pronounced her name wrong, but she's out of Socialist Alternative out of Seattle. She's a city councilor right now. And the only thing I would say is, and I'm keeping it 100, she has a thick accent. So I don't know how the middle America would take her, but I think she's an excellent candidate. And who else? There's come up a couple other people. All right. So if anybody else comes to my mind, but at one point I would have loved AOC to run. Yeah. And if she gets in the race, I wouldn't be mad at it. But I think she lost some progressive political capital over time.
She has.
Go ahead.
Well, so let's talk about that for a little bit. Yeah. One of the main criticisms I have of Democrats is Democrats focus on the federal government too much. Mm-hmm. The Republicans run small government and small ball positions, your mayors, your city councilmen, they run that the same way baseball runs a farm league. You find out who your good players are and you move them up. A lot of Republicans aren't well connected. You got some Bushes, but for the most part, it's a lot of people who came up through the ranks, and you figure out who's solid that way. So when you have your person out there in Seattle who's a city councilman, why shouldn't she be the mayor of Seattle? Why shouldn't she be the governor of Washington? Because that's how that's how you gerrymander districts. That's how you change voting rights rules. That's how you get, Planned Parenthood closed. That's how you change school board rules. That's how you do all the things that everybody's against who's reasonable and rational, but Republicans run it that way. That's how you get judges appointed. That's how you do those things. You want to lock every, brown person up? You want to have stop and frisk? Be the mayor. The mayor of New York was the one who initiated stop and frisk. That wasn't the president.
Yeah.
When the police harass you, it's not the CIA. It's the, whatever county police department. It's the whatever city police department. That's how you do it. A lot of Democrats do not work at local positions. And to win a local election, you might just need $5,000. And then,
awesome.
Yeah, and then you change the machine because the machine is mostly local people. It's not national people.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so to go to AOC has to win locally before she can win nationally. And she loses progressive points because the New York Democrats want to redistrict her out of her position. They want to do it very badly. And so every time she votes, she has that hanging over her shoulder. Because if they change her district to include more people of one ethnicity and not another ethnicity, not to throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah.
But once they do that, she's out of a job.
Okay.
And once she's out of a job, she's not a problem to people anymore because she has paid for people to primary other Democrats. She has made Nancy Pelosi put Katie Porter, for instance, in charge of finance and in charge of ethics. That's something that's an initiative that she spearheaded. And once she's out of the way, who's running that? It's not just who's going to replace Bernie because Bernie has soldiers now. It's what are we going to do when they start knocking the soldiers off one by one?
See, that brings me to, and I don't even have, maybe I'll bring up the picture later, but to me, AOC lost progressive points. And I hear what you're saying on different, I think she voted for that, the Israel give the Iron Dome. I forgot.
Yeah.
I think she voted present.
She voted present.
Yeah, right. So that's losing some progressive capital there. And to me, her not going on left media on a consistent basis is losing progressive capital for me. And I'll give you an example why, because some people will say, oh, she don't have to go on this show or that show to bolster their audience. No, that's what we need. We actually need our progressives who get it elected to come back to left media, whether it's TYT, status quo. I'm now becoming cool with the Fred Hampton leftist people, or any whatever she decides, but to go on left media to help bolster us, because to me, I think in 2024, which is going to be the big year, what happened in 2016, what happened in 2020, it was a media that kind of messed up Bernie. So we need to bolster our left media and get them out there so that we could come back them. But it sounds like you got something to say. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's a 100% true argument. So to quote Winston Churchill, he said when America joined World War II that you don't have to talk as sweetly to the women once they're in the harem. And that was a metaphor he used. And a lot of people do that. Once they win, they don't abandon their base, but they try to achieve more. And that's something that'll mess you up. So one of the things I learned being married was I got to make sure my wife is happy before I branch out. It's the same thing in politics. Who are the people who got you in the door? You always have to make sure you're letting them know that you're there for them. Number one. And so and like you said, if AOC goes on left media more, left media is stronger, which only increases her power. Same thing with any relationship. My wife's a neuropsychologist. I got out of the Navy and I moved with her so that she could get her neuropsychology accreditation. That's crazy. Like a lot of people won't do that. And there's no reason for me to fumble our bag because I'm chasing my bag. We can both get a bag. And that's what AOC is forgetting right now. And that's what a lot of people forget after they get elected.
And now I totally agree with you on that one. And an example of in the past of somebody who helped left media was a guy named Bernie Sanders. I started off as a Ron Paul supporter. That's how I got into politics. And then slowly, a guy named Tom Hartman, who has his own show, he used to debate conservatives often, very often, just bring them on the show. And it wasn't a bad faith debate like you would see on Fox News, Sean Hannity and what's that, the guy on the left that used to be weak.
Oh, on the left? Oh.
It was Sean Hannity and Alan Combs. You could tell the other guy was a formative Republican that Tom Hartman, a progressive, was debating. And he was making the better points enough that he brought me from being a Ron Paul supporter. Of course, Ron Paul lost the primary, but I eventually supported the Green Party candidate in that same 2008 election because of Tom bringing me over with his arguments, and from then on I was a progressive. But he also had every once a week it was something called Brunch with Bernie, where he would have Bernie Sanders come on the show for a whole hour, and he would just take. Imagine a senator taking calls. Like,
yeah.
Now, of course, they had a screener probably that's making sure no crazy comes through. But it was, you could tell it was authentic because there were questions that Bernie had to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to try to look it up, and if I could get back to you, I'll get back to you or whatever. That's how you know it was real, because I don't expect my politicians to know everything, but at least he was. He was reachable in that sense that he would once a week, he was going to be on this show, and you could potentially ask this man a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's an important thing. Outreach, and not just outreach, but inreach is what they call it. Okay. Once you let people know that you're there for them, that's literally all you need ever. Again, being in the military, I've had a lot of different leaders. The best leaders I had, they could tell me stand at attention next to this broom closet for 24 hours. When it opens, the admiral's in there. You need to salute him and get him to his car. It didn't matter if they were lying or not. I would do it. And that's what you got from Bernie Sanders. That's what you get from progressives that are actually reaching out to people. I don't want to say AOC is not reaching out to people, but she could do better. Very, very, very in those particular areas that you highlight.
Now, it's one thing to go on your Instagram where you control what questions you answer, right? It's one thing because she does that. She does a great job of that. But it's another thing to go on someone's show where the audience is keeping the host accountable. Like, they're going to call you out. Hey, why are you going so soft on AOC? So, they're more pressured to ask the tough questions, to certain questions that we care about. So we're going to do a 5 minute. I'm going to look at some questions here, and just like 30 seconds if you can, Marcus. I want to go through these questions, and then the last 10 minutes we're going to talk about the People's Gauntlet, and then we're going to have a great Thanksgiving. All right. So first thing, PJ, all for nothing. Does anyone think John Fetterman has a future career in national politics? I feel he can win over some independent white blue-collar workers and get them to turn out. What you think about John Fetterman?
All right. So I'm here in Pennsylvania. John Fetterman's he's my guy. He's like 25 feet tall. He's very, very outspoken. He has a really bright future, provided he can get over this hurdle right here in Pennsylvania. Because this is not a race he's going to win if he plays the game the Pennsylvania Democrats play. So that's all there is to it. He'll win over independent white blue-collar voters. Everybody knows he has their back, but you got to be able to beat the Republican machine in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania Democrats do not have what it takes to do that.
Interesting. So he's got to do what you're saying and get people who don't usually vote, motivate those people to come out. All right, the next question from Nito Nova. Why aren't y'all African Americans not able to convince your parents to vote progressive? Isn't free healthcare and $15 minimum wage appealing to them? I'm a black. Oh, for your information, I'm a black South African. I forgot what FYI for a second was. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, that's a good question, Nito. So here's the thing about our parents that a lot of young people don't understand is that large gains are often met with blowback. So let's go back to Reconstruction for a little bit. Reconstruction, after the Civil War, they were rebuilding the South. Black people got to vote. What happened for 30 years is that there were race riots. You can look it up, South Carolina. Black people were going to vote, and a bunch of armed Caucasian people showed up and said, how many of you guys have guns? We need your guns. Because it was in the law in South Carolina at the time, if a black man had a gun, you could just ask him for it. They'd have to give it to you. They took their guns and they killed them all. Every time there's a very, very big or even a perceived big win, the blowback is incredible. And our parents lived through that. We didn't live through that. We did live through the blowback against Obama because Barack Obama won. He didn't do anything very progressive. He didn't do anything insane. And the Tea Party showed up out of nowhere to make sure all the blacks and all the Mexicans and all the gays knew that this is the white man's America. And that's just what it came down to. And it's not all the white men, but the white men that say it believe that they're looking out for all the other white people. And so our parents oftentimes believe that we have to make sure we have a win that we can hold on to before we go get another win. Because when you branch out into, oh, we desegregated schools, everything's gonna be sweet. Private schools came out. Then they started defunding inner city schools. There's always a counter push to any push we do.
That's a good point, because even I have an example. I did a workshop with Fred Hampton Leftists, and they have a new name now. But they did a general strike summit, and I wanted to get involved. And I did a workshop on direct action, and one of the slides was about the Birmingham initiative, where the Birmingham boycott, where they did something called Operation C for confrontation. That's what they called it, and they won that fight. They did the boycott. They went through the dogs, the fire hoses, and all that stuff. But they won that fight where they had an agreement within 90 days. The business owners were going to take down the whites only signs, and they segregated, and they even had made arrangements to have them hire black employees. But after that win, you came as a result of that, the backlash, which was the KKK bombed Martin Luther King's brother, who lived in Alabama at the time. They bombed the famous church with the 4 girls in there that they bombed and killed them. So there was definitely backlash to those wins. So that's something that progressives we got to think about. That Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. I love my movies. So let's get another question here. Well, here's a comment, and I want to ask you what your opinion of this is. So War said, Bernie didn't do himself any favors by saying my friend Joe every 5 minutes either. Yeah, Obama did damage, but so did Bernie. What you think about that comment?
I think that people really want Bernie Sanders to be somebody that he's not. Bernie Sanders is a polite gentleman. Bernie Sanders believes that his ideas will win eventually. He does not believe he has to force his ideas down anybody's throat. Joe Biden is his friend. And he's going to say that. The same thing happened to John McCain when he was running against Obama. They had the joint town hall. The lady got up and said, Barack Obama's a Muslim. And John McCain was like, hey, I'll let you know right now, Barack Obama's not a Muslim. He's a great guy. He's a good legislator. Politicians like that, especially on the right, are not making it to big positions anymore. You got to be cutthroat now. And people want Bernie Sanders to be cutthroat without realizing that Bernie Sanders is where he is, and he is who he is because he's not cutthroat.
That's
a politician.
That's a great point. I would I'm going to play devil's advocate. And what if to someone that said, well, that's why John McCain lost. That's why there's not many of those type of Republicans rising up the ranks anymore. Couldn't Bernie have just said he could still be friends with him, but what if he would have just said, I think instead of answering that question that way, say, I think I'm the better candidate. I'm the one running for, just kind of, you can feel that way, but you don't have to answer it. What you think about that?
See, and the thing is, once you see your politicians being strategic, a lot of their support falls away because what we're looking for is open and honest politicians. And you can have your cake, you can eat your cake. Those are your options. Because if you want somebody that's kind of a snake, you're going to get somebody that's kind of a snake. Do you know many snakes you can trust?
Okay, this is interesting because I think I want to say I disagree to a certain extent. I'm going to say where exactly. Because there was a point in the campaign where the media, which is the enemy of the left, the progressives, they were trying to get one on Bernie. And out of all the many times, this is one of the times that they brought up allowing prisoners to vote, right? And I think as a candidate, you have to be politically savvy enough to kind of swipe certain, establishment people do it all the time. They don't straight up answer a question. And I feel, and I could be wrong, I don't know if it was a candidate, but I feel like we progressives need to learn that technique. And actually, Bernie does do this at times. He knows how to change. Like they would ask him a question and he would swipe it away real quick and then he'd go straight to Medicare for all 15 He's actually really good at that. But I think in that case, he should have, you kind of know, even though we know and he knows in that Vermont, they actually allow prisoners to vote, I believe. He could have answered that. What you think? Maybe he could.
So here's the problem. You can answer that question honestly and be true about it. So yes, I believe everybody who's incarcerated should vote because they're American citizens. Now let's talk about it. In Vermont, we let incarcerated people vote, but it's 0.5% of our voting population. If you're worried about 0.5% of the people, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, if we go down to Alabama, it's 10% of your population. That is a problem. But the problem is that 10% of the people in Alabama are locked up or felons who can't vote. Let's talk about that. How can we make it so that's only 0.5% of the population? Because I agree, it would be a problem to let 10% of people vote if those 10% of people haven't even paid their debt to society. We have to figure out how to fix society so there's less people even in that position. You can flip it. A lot of people do not know how to flip a question. And that's what you have to do, to be honest.
You're absolutely right, and I think that's why I like Jesse Ventura so much, because he's the type of guy I would have confidence that he would be able to do something like that.
Fetterman too.
Okay, yeah. I haven't seen him as. I know he's the lieutenant governor. I remember when he ran for that position, I believe, and I remember he endorsed Bernie. So he's somebody that I would love to see enter the. Especially he would be taking out a Republican, right? Or taking out.
Republican he is. And same. And that's what Steve is like too. Steve's the same way. He was a national debate champion. Steve Holden, New York 24, and same deal. You ask him a question, and he'll say, "Well, you're not looking at the actual problem. The actual problem isn't the black crime rate. The actual problem is the black poverty rate. And if we fix the black poverty rate, you'll see we fix the black crime rate. Because if you go to a trailer park, you see the exact same crime rates in Caucasian people. If you go to an immigrant enclave, you see the same crime rates. So if we fix the poverty rate, the crime rate itself is automatically fixed. You don't fix it by throwing people in the jail. They're just taking a master's class in criminality.
Awesome. Wow, that's very true, very true. So guys, look out for definitely Fetterman over there in PA as he runs. Do you have any strong opinion about his opponents that he's running against? I'm just curious.
In Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that he's running against for Senate.
Here's the deal, man.
There's a guy that I don't, his name is real tricky. But he has braids, black guy. You know what I'm talking about?
No,
okay, go ahead.
The thing is, the problem in Pennsylvania is that Pennsylvania, like, just straight up, they're not going to elect a black Democrat to a statewide office. Pennsylvania has Philly and it has Pittsburgh. And then it has, like, where I live right now, there's horse parking downtown. Legit horse parking. Nobody knows this about the Amish, but the Amish are millionaires. They spend a lot of money on politics. I'm talking, you see a horse going down the highway, and they have a horse lane, and it's a big old Trump flag on that carriage.
Really?
Yeah. So they spend a lot of money to make sure that they're kept what they feel is safe. There's a lot of fracking money that's out in Pennsylvania, and a lot of Democrats are anti-fracking for good reason. But because there's that much money in the state, it's almost impossible that an actual black, especially a black progressive, is going to get elected to a statewide office in Pennsylvania unless he's a war hero or, pulled a burning bus out of an orphanage. It's not going to happen. So Fetterman, I believe, is not only the best bet, but I believe he's a good choice.
Interesting. I do a show called Political Junkies every Monday, and we have a segment called No Cow Zone, which stands for No Cancel Zone. And I want to bring that out for a quick second because I want to bring up your point, which I think you made a great point. And this is the only area where I believe in identity politics to a certain extent. Let me explain before anybody cancels me. I'm talking about if we're going to be strategic about winning power, I think that is something what you said, where you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep it real. Pennsylvania is not electing a black senator. Now, people are going to say, well, what happened with Obama? We said we'd never have a black president. Well, I'm not going to say in all cases. I think that was a situation where he came up through the ranks and he legit won the primary, right? So I'll say that he came up through the ranks. He worked his butt off, so give it to him. And let's see, the person that I'm talking about in Pennsylvania, we'll see what happens with him. So I'm not telling him to drop out. I'm just saying that if I was somebody trying to strategize, like who do I want as a candidate? I would say, okay, let's promote this person, let's support this person more than that person because I'm just trying to win. I'm just trying to win power. And I just want Medicare for all, I want $15 an hour, I want all the progressive policy. Go ahead, Marcus.
And how I'd respond to that is, I would say, look at Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was the mastermind, the genius behind the civil rights movement. Not entirely, but to a large extent. But Bayard Rustin was a homosexual in the South in the 1960s, trying to get black people who largely went to church to do something. And so what Rustin did was, what they all did was they sat down, they told each other the truth, and they got some nice figureheads that were smart, that spoke well, that were committed to the movement, but who knew how to listen to people who were smarter and more dedicated than them and more strategic than them. So when you're trying to win, that's something you do have to take into account. When they do fundraising drives, or just give one penny a day to these children, they show you something that makes you want to give a penny a day. Some of those commercials you watch, you're like, oh my goodness, I got to give these guys the money. That's what it comes down to. That's what strategy is. And Republicans do it every single time. They get they put a cowboy hat and some boots on them, and they throw them out there. If they don't have the cowboy hat and boots, they send them back to the wardrobe to get cowboy hat and boots, because that's who people think they're voting for. That's what it comes down to sometimes.
Yeah. When George Bush ran, I remember like he played up that whole cowboy side of him when he didn't grow up from down south.
Exactly. They're from New England.
Yeah,
and he had his ranch. I'm out here clearing brush on my ranch. Bro, you used to own the Astros. You're a millionaire. Exactly. Catch me doing yard work when I'm a millionaire. Catch me.
Exactly. Oh man, we hitting 11. Can I grab 10 more minutes of your time?
Yes, you can.
All right, awesome. All right, so let's go right into the chat. Sorry, we're going to close off any outside questions right now. We're rolling right here, and we're about to end the show. So I wanted to ask you about the People's Gauntlet. So there's 3 things I wanted to get your opinion on this initiative that we're working on. I want to get your opinion on the idea. Something we want to talk about, raising money. What's the best way to raise? And then the main thing I wanted to get from you, and I wanted to have this whole interview, is about how to incorporate volunteers into the People's Gauntlet. So the first question is, what do you think about the idea?
I like the idea. I think that there's not a lot of people that have a legitimate slate of things that actual voters care about. I don't say actual voters. So we all care about the environment. We all care about big ticket issues, but there's not a lot of people that have a slate of, what do I care about locally? Because there are things that people in New York, in Jersey, in Georgia, in California, in Iowa all care about. And the People's Gauntlet seems like it's trying to get that. Like, what are we, like, down to the essentials? We want money. We want a job. If you work a job, you should be able to pay rent. That's an important thing that a lot of people are ignoring for some reason. It's not just the fight for 15, because the fight for 15 in, for instance, New York City isn't enough. If you work a job for 40 hours a week, you should be able to pay rent. And the People's Gauntlet is giving you a lot more than that. If you went to college to get a job and you owe, $250,000, and you're a social worker, for instance. I know a lot of social workers making 30, 40 a year, and they owe $200,000-$300,000 because they went to grad school so they could help people. If you owe that much money, you shouldn't be paying it the way that you're paying it. You're working for the city. That's debt that should be canceled. And the People's Gauntlet is focused specifically on those issues, and I like that.
Appreciate that, definitely, and we're hoping to grow that. I'm looking forward to Steve and becoming a People's Contender, which means that you've completed all 5 gauntlets, and then we move on from there. All right. So the next question is, I want to ask you. So I'm going to ask you how you think we should be raise money, and then I'll tell you what my plan is as of right now. So yeah.
All right. Your first thing is, I like the Bernie Sanders fundraising plan. I think it was one of the best plans. After he lost, the DNC was beating down his door to get his donor list. They didn't realize his donor list was people who gave $2, $3, $4.
Yeah.
And that's how everybody should be raising money.
Not only that, but as a Bernie donor, I'm not looking for any person I'm not looking to donate to people who's not progressive, who doesn't have the same ideology as Bernie. So
exactly.
Even if he got a hold of, if he gave the list away to Hillary Clinton or somebody, I'm not voting for them.
Exactly. And that's the problem. They wanted his list, like the list meant the money came. That's not how it works for people who donated because they believe in you.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as the idea I have right now is, I didn't even put up my initial task right now. Money is not part of it at all, but I do understand that down the line, it costs money to host the website and to do certain things. So I got to find some way to raise money. So my initial thought, and there's not even a donor page right now, but that's where I'm going. I'm thinking I'm just going to have a simple donation page. And then I was thinking, all right, how do I make sure, like, once this thing, I have a lot of faith that hopefully this thing is going to really pop off. Like, if George Soros comes in and throw $1 million, that can be counterproductive, because now all the critics can say, oh, we got Soros money. So I'm even thinking of having a $200 monthly limit so that I don't have that baggage of big donors. And then they're going to be like, oh, we want you to have a fundraiser. And then I'm going to fundraiser plates, $10,000 plates, and now smooching with this person and that. I don't want that problem. Like, I think we have enough organizations, and much love to them. I don't want to disparage them, but this initiative is going to be different. That's when I want this thing to stand out as a true stick to the grassroots movement. So as far as PACs and I know we touched a little bit on that. I'm even thinking not to have a PAC because I talked to somebody named Alex Arzo, and she gave me some good advice. She was a campaign finance person, so similar to what you are for volunteers, she did that for various campaigns as a finance. And something that she said was that when she looked into the details of PACs, even though it wasn't a corporate PAC, because of course progressives don't take corporate PAC, she said regular PACs that's not quote unquote corporate PACs, you find that they're corporatists that send money even to the regular PACs. So this might be a point of disagreement. So I want to see what you think about that.
This is a huge point of disagreement.
Okay.
If I'm going to war and everybody has guns, why am I bringing a sword?
Okay.
That's not how I get down ever. I don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
And so Bernie has a PAC, number one. Number two, AOC has a PAC. Number three, the PAC is what the directors of the PAC make it. Because at the end of the day, you know, we don't take money from oil executives. We don't take money from oil. When you donate $200 to a PAC, you say what industry you're in. That's just part of the donation form. If a bunch of oil people that are working, you know, at a gas station or something, making $15 an hour donate to you, it seems like it's oil money. What you have to say is the same thing Jesus said, you know, by your fruits ye shall know them. At the end of the day, if you're a PAC and you're doing good stuff, it won't matter who your donors are. Because sometimes rich people really want you to do what's best for people. The dude who runs REI, he runs REI. They're closed today. And they're closed on Black Friday because he wants people to spend time with their families. He donates to a lot of left organizations in Seattle, and they take his money. But it's still a big industry. It's a corporation. If everybody has a PAC and you don't have a PAC, all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot.
Interesting. So what about the idea that we can build from grassroots? So from people who send $5 a month, like that's what Bernie did also. I didn't know Bernie had a PAC. I thought he just raised primarily like $27 at a time. So
the thing about a PAC that's different from a campaign fund is that a PAC is allowed to do certain political messaging. So even if you operate as a nonprofit, when you operate as a political nonprofit, there's different rules. So the reason why you have a political action committee is so you can do political action. That's all it comes down to. Because nonprofits do have certain political actions they're not allowed to do. You need a PAC, one, because you can take more money from individuals, because some people will be like, dang, I like what y'all doing. Here's 5Gs. I made all my money on Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Here's 5Gs. Take that money. Use that money. Don't ever turn down money.
All right. So you're giving me something to work with. This is why I wanted to listen to both sides. And I think this is definitely something that I got to think about seriously. All right. So what else we got? So the last question, the most important question, volunteers and the People's Gauntlet. So the idea for my audience and for anybody who don't know, I know my audience probably knows already, but for people who don't know, the People's Gauntlet is basically an idea where the candidates are vetted by the people. So every cycle, we're probably going to modify the gauntlet to hopefully as things are worked on and gets done, we could take that off of the gauntlet and say, okay, that was solved, but we need to solve this other issue. So that's going to be every cycle we're going to revisit the gauntlet. But the main idea is to get candidates to come forward, and then they're going to get the endorsement of the people. They're going to become the people's champion. So their first task is to become a people's contender, means they did all the gauntlets, and then the volunteer base is going to vote on who becomes the champion. So let's say in District 1, I'm just going to throw a number out there. District 1, there's Progressive 1, 2, and 3, and they all did the People's Gauntlet. If at some point we're going to have, like, I don't want to call it a debate, we're going to call it a discussion where we bring all 3 candidates and we have them discuss different things, like to clear up and to differentiate themselves so that the voters are going to really see the candidates. And then after that, at some point, they're all going to vote. I'm thinking of doing star voting, not even ranked choice voting. This is a good way of voting. And they're going to be able to vote on who becomes the people's champion. And then let's say candidate 2 wins, 1 and 3 will drop out and endorse 2 and give them like all that strength, because they're going and at the very least, they're going to drop out. At the most, they're going to actively, support in whatever way they can. And that's what I'm really hoping from the progressive community. I'm not in a fantasy world that I'm thinking everybody's going to do that, but I'm hoping that people who are progressive, that they care about the issues, they're going to join that champion. And the idea is like what Obama did consolidating the moderates against Bernie Sanders, around Biden. So this is going to be a systematic way for progressives to organize behind one person and then move forward. So right now, I have the first phase of the People's Gauntlet. We have 4 candidates. Let me show it one more time. We have the 4 candidates here who have done their actual contenders. And if I click on if you go to the site and you click on their face, it will come up with their People's Gauntlet / Amani Oakley. This is for Amani, who's in New Jersey. And it has all the gauntlets right here. Gauntlet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can click on any of these videos and they'll let you know how they feel about those topics. But the question is, we don't have the infrastructure yet for the volunteers to vote on who would be a champion. Now, right now, we don't have that problem because we don't have enough candidates that there's 2 people in the race or whatever. But I want to build out the volunteer base. And I'm talking a lot, but I'm getting to a point. So the idea that I said, what if we can build a progressive infrastructure in every district by allowing the candidates to have their volunteers join the People's Gauntlet site. So they'll have their own page, kind of like a MySpace or a Facebook. They'll have their own page. Then we make volunteering fun. So knocking on doors, you get 1 point. I'm just throwing points out there so you get the idea of where I'm going. Let's say every door you knock on, you get 1 point. Every phone banking, you get 2 points. If you host a phone bank or some kind of campaign event, you get 25 points because I'm sure that's a big deal to host an event. So you get the idea. For depending on the difficulty, you get a certain amount of points. And then as you build up points among the volunteers, whoever gets the most points that week, they get praised in some way. Maybe they get a badge or they get a phone call from the candidate or a t-shirt. So we're kind of gamifying and making volunteering fun and competitive to try to promote more volunteering. So I'm finally getting to my man Marcus, where I say the problem I have is I think I don't want to be a hindrance, because I've heard that from one of my candidates. They said, they're really busy, but I don't know if this will add work to their load. So what do you think about this idea of what I'm explaining so far, Marcus?
So what I think right now is that I don't think gamification works very well for a lot of reasons. Now, if you get a T-shirt or something, that's dope. But remember when we were in school and they would have the fundraiser, and it's like, yeah, if you sell so much money, you get the keychain. But if you sell $100, you get. Nobody ever got that. I don't know, light up moon rock or whatever it was. Nobody ever got that. So yeah. I don't think gamification works. What I do think is, like you said, you want to get a volunteer base in every area, and I think we need to think more about like the cloud. You don't have servers in every city. You have servers that are reachable from every city. Because a lot of volunteer work now is done electronically. You need people on Facebook posts. You need people sending text messages. You need people doing phone calls. And then when you're doing that for a candidate, what you want to do is leverage that for the candidate. And then when people are all going to the candidate's webpage locally, they'll get their local volunteer base. And that's what you want. Because you're not going to be able to build something up nationwide. You can build something up in 1 or 2 areas whereby you can now utilize that in Columbus, Ohio, even though everybody who's volunteering for you is in Virginia and New York and Florida. That's what you want, because then you can pinpoint people who went through the gauntlet and get a flood of volunteers working for them, even though they're all remote. At which point you increase your particular power, you increase your reputation.
I'm trying to get exactly. I don't know if I comprehend exactly what you're saying. So, let's say you're in New Jersey and you're volunteering in New Jersey, you're saying you're saying that person can help somebody in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So there's platforms that'll let you text from Jersey and it comes out as a Pennsylvania number. You get on. There's Facebook groups you can join. There's a bunch of stuff you can do electronically that will drive local people to volunteer for the candidate. And that's how they get their local. That's how you get your local volunteer base. But what you're going to do is bring in a pre-staged remote volunteer base that they use all electronically to get local volunteers.
Got you. And I think that's interesting because, luckily there's primaries on different dates. So it's not all on the same exact date. So there's going to be times that we can put out an announcement or call to action to the whole volunteer base national, say, hey, in this particular race, can you help us get 100,000 phone banks
Exactly.
something like that. And they could do that from anywhere in the nation, right? So let me ask you this question then, Marcus. How do you motivate and keep volunteers engaged?
All right, I'm gonna
Because
say this.
that's what I was thinking about. The gamification would help do that. But let me know what you think.
All right, I'm gonna say this is gonna have to be my last comment. But the way you get them engaged is to win and then give them the stuff they said they wanted. This is why Republicans always have volunteers. They run, they say they don't like Mexicans and Muslims. Donald Trump wins. First thing you get is a Muslim ban. Second thing you get is him overturning everything Obama did to protect undocumented workers. That's what you get. So when progressives win, they have to deliver. That's what it comes down to. That's how you keep volunteers engaged. They go, yo, I volunteered for this campaign. They won. Next thing you know was $15 minimum wage. Or next thing you know, they took the resource officer out of the school and replaced them with counselors. Something. Give somebody something tangible. That's all. That's all you can do. That's the best thing you can do. That keeps the volunteers coming back.
Gotcha. All right, Marcus Cooper, thank you so much for coming through the Progressive War Room. Thank you, Kim, for coming out. Thank you, All for Nothing, the Love Always. Thank you, Sterling W, Paul Patrick, Holly Horn, PJ Holly, All for Nothing. And I hope to do this again with you, my man. And
yeah, man, anytime.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope everybody enjoyed the progressive strategy that we talked about. And definitely join us for next time. We're going to have our Political Junkie show coming up this Monday at 8 o'clock. So for all the people in the chat, check us out. Thank you so much again, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving. Adios. Much love. And Brunch.